Hey, let's play a quick game. Okay, I'm going to put some images on the screen. In the first image, in the forest scene, take a look and decide what's the difference between the two images, the left and the right side image. I'll give you a hint. There's four things that you're looking for that are different. Okay, done? Great. Did you find all four things? We'll reveal the answers at the end. Let's keep going a little bit more with this. In the next image, I want you to consider the scene with this cat and list how many things you'll have to address and in what order. Here's the scene. Got it? Okay, again, we'll talk about that and address what those issues are towards the end of the video. The real question is, what would you do about this? So in the scene with the cat, what would you do? Would you point out the issue to somebody else? Potentially, you'd walk past and ignore it altogether. Maybe you'd fix one or two of the things and leave the rest. The reason that we're looking at this is you have to notice, you have to be aware of what goes on around us. Even if you're going through the same thing day in and day out, your routine is completely the same, you still are going to come across things that you can choose to notice or not, right? And then make choices about how you may or may not address them. All day long, we come across these. Let's say you're on your way to work and there's a pothole in the road. Maybe it's not something you can do anything about. Maybe you're not empowered to fix it. You could drive around it. Maybe you'll flag it in the Waze app so other people know to watch out for it. You could call the city and report it. And it will depend on your circumstances too. We all take different actions based on the issues we're faced with, the situation at hand, and what we're expected to do about it. So if you're late to work, you're probably going to drive around that pothole and not do anything else. If you're from out of town, you're very unlikely to call the city about it. As a boss leader, and by now I hope you know that I'm talking about that very special person who's working on elevating themselves and using their power for the good of themselves and those around them. So, as a boss leader, you've got to set expectations with your team on what you expect and how to deal with each issue. Do you want them to notice and say something? Are there certain situations where they can notice and not do something? Do you want them to notice, to think about it, to bring a particular solution or suggestion to the conversation? There's lots of advice for how to deal with problems at work, and there's some excellent systems out there to teach you issue and risk management, which I suggest you look into. I've always fallen into the camp of you need to notice it, you need to think about it, and propose a solution. Not everybody agrees with that. In his book, Ben Horowitz writes in The Hard Thing About Hard Things that sometimes you'll lose information or people won't feel free to mention an issue or a problem if you don't set the right company culture. And especially, they won't bring it forward if they don't know what to do about a problem. So, the example he uses is there's an engineer who's identified a serious flaw in the way a product is marketed, but because he doesn't know anything about how to fix that marketing issue, he doesn't raise the issue and it blows up later. So, I'll counter this with a couple other considerations. Being able and willing to raise a problem to management is a cultural issue at the heart. And Horowitz sort of leans on this. He says a healthy culture is one that encourages people to share bad news. That may be true. I would suggest that a culture of communicating both positive and in context, bad or negative news, is the one that we want to really foster and create. The reason that we say raise an issue and bring a solution is not because we expect your solution to be the answer. It's not because we're going to necessarily use the solution that you bring. It's because it's an important component of your team, your department, your company culture. You're aiming to create an environment that allows people to feel empowered and also doesn't encourage whining or complaining or martyrs and creates a sense of ownership. So in his example, the person's not willing to bring the issue forward because they don't know what it takes to resolve, and that's fair. But asking people about solutions isn't about fixing the problem, it's primarily about ownership. When everybody in the company feels like they own a piece of the company, like they actually take a concern or a care about the company, the same as you would if you were at home and walked in a room and you saw the light bulb was out. Maybe you can't fix the light bulb at that moment, but don't you want to know about it? Don't you want to try and fix it, do something about it? It's your house. You want to sit in the room with light, and you want people to think that about your company and your team as well. Another component that's completely ignored is that it's really important for your team, your department, your company to manage issues and risks. So many companies will wait to try to resolve or mitigate a problem or an issue until it's already too late. It's blown up and you've got to actually really do some damage control. When you do issue and risk management proactively as part of daily operations with a real process tied to it, something like a critical server error or a product marketing problem is easier to notice and flag and address, and the communication has a place to live. It's not just toss or hide. So let me break this down. As a boss leader, first, decide what you expect. Second, teach your team what you expect. And third, work with them on that process until you see that they're able to get most of it done on their own. So when you teach your team what you expect about issue management, you're going to have to get real specific. So for example, get detailed. When you notice blank, I expect you to blank. When you notice soap in the shared restroom is empty, I expect you to call facilities management. When you notice our servers are seeing extremely high volumes, I expect you to follow the IT process escalation. When you feel frustrated because you keep seeing the same issue happening over and over, I expect you to write down the problem. Talk to others around you to see if they've noticed this problem as well. Diagnose and see if there are any contributing factors, root cause analysis. Bring a solution to the process that's established for risk and issue management so that we can go through and solve it together. The good thing is you don't have to figure these out all by yourself. I am by no means saying that a boss leader has to go write down every problem or possible problem and figure out what the solution is. You can get your team together, lean in, figure out what the categories are, what the potential ask is, but you do have to go through and have that ready and then teach everybody on the team about it. So, you probably already have facilities maintenance teams or IT escalation processes. In some cases, you're not asking people to step in and bring everything to the process. You're asking them to be aware of existing processes. And then when it comes to your team, your division, your department, the day-to-day operations that you actively work on, that's probably where you'll see most of these come alive. That's when you want people to really know what the process is. And so teach them that. They should bring a potential solution with a documented concern. They should know where the process is and how to fill out the information, who they need to inform. That will be baked in. When I say take some lessons on issue and risk management, those sorts of things are, this is the tool you use, this is the information you need, this is who it goes to, this is who's informed about it, this is who will act on it. That becomes part of the existing process, and then you're teaching to that. So for an example, let's say that somebody says on your team says there's water on the floor every morning in the shared pantry. Okay. What if instead you taught them to say, every morning when I go to get a cup of coffee in our shared kitchen on the second floor, I find a pool of water on the counter and it's dripping onto the floor. It looks like it's coming from the coffee pot itself, but I'm not sure. What should I do? Maybe I could call maintenance and ask them to check the coffee pot. That's a very simplistic example, obviously. As I mentioned before, you may have that entire set of types of problems. Don't bring it to me. It's going to be handled. You go contact maintenance per this other set of processes that already exist in the company. I'm not saying reinvent the wheel. I'm saying help people understand that you expect them to notice, to own it, and what they can't own themselves feeds into the process that you establish. So let's take a harder example. Let's say your team member comes to you and says, we can't access the data we need on customer Z. Bob, our IT lead, is out on holiday. He left a backup, but we can't get in touch with the backup. And we don't know what to do because normally Bob will log into the database. He'll grab what the information we need and put it in a shared file. We know where the database, how to get to it, but we don't have the right login, so we can't get the data. We have a presentation due tomorrow in front of the customer. So what should we do? In that case, you are teaching your team to identify the issue, find as much information about it as possible, talk about the urgency or the impact, and feed it into the process. Your process will assign a priority automatically. It will assign people to handle it automatically, or at least give you the heads up so that you're not starting from scratch every time. But you want your team to know what information and details they need and to suggest potentially the actions that they would take. You may need to ask them some follow-up questions, but what tends to happen if you let them just bring the problem as stated at this point, they will drop it and let everybody else handle it. And then you've avoided ownership and you haven't taught them how to solve the problem. Patrick Bet-David, in his book, Your Next 5 Moves, suggests that an essential component to leadership is being able to process issues and taking ownership for those issues. So a lot of people will try to blame this on somebody else or escape the problem altogether. And instead, what you are looking for is to teach responsibility across the roles in your team, to put the frustration that the issue causes aside and to say, let's figure out how to diagnose, to fix, and then prevent these problems in the future. So teach your team to come along on the ride with you, to process the issue. Don't let it stop at notice and report. Reward and incent the right behaviors that you want to see here. In this case, what else could you do with this particular issue? If you wanted to drill down into it, the argument that I would make about not everybody has an answer to the solution is you're not asking for the right answer. You're asking for people to step up and show that they have some ownership, to make some suggestions. We learn from each other too. What you're looking for is that you've set expectations, you're teaching through those steps and that attitude, you're rewarding participation and alliance to the process, and you're creating a culture of ownership, and you're coming back after and fixing, adding into your team process so that this sort of thing is less likely to happen again. That makes a great place for everybody to work. The takeaways here: create a culture that empowers your team and notice and mention issues. Be clear that this isn't so they can whine and complain, but so that we're all working together to make everything better here, easier for everybody on the team. Check your process, make sure there is a vigorous risk and issue management component that your team is trained on and aware of, and that they are using it on a regular enough basis that it's not used just for when things are about to explode. Spend time teaching them how the process works and how to solve problems, and eventually you'll be able to step back and they'll be managing most of these things without having to pull you in. Teach them to accept responsibility and what your expectations are, and teach all your managers who have reports to people reporting into them that they need to do this too. Everything needs to roll up. That's boss leadership and issue management. Now, are you ready to go back to that little game from the beginning? For those of you who played the game earlier and you want the answers, I'll put on the screen here the forest scene where you were looking for 4 items that are different. They're circled in red on the right side of the screen. So those are the 4 items you should have been looking for. That is awareness, right? And then the second one, the cat who's knocked over the pottery. Here are some potential things that you might consider doing. Check on the cat. You're prioritizing the amount of harm, or the living individual in this case. So check on the cat and ensure that there's no harm that needs to be addressed. Then pick up carefully and sweep up the broken pottery. Now, my personal intent would be to go find a vacuum, because those little shards of pottery, you want to remove as much danger for the next person, including yourself. So maybe use a vacuum to clean up any broken shards of pottery and to grab that extra dirt that you can't repot. Trim the broken leaves from the plant and get it settled back in the pot. Make sure it's healthy, and then consider the situation. How did the cat knock this over? You might want to put it in a new location, put it behind a cabinet, something, create a preventative barrier that keeps the cat from being able to get to it. It could be that the pot goes in a different room so that this doesn't happen again. Now, there are a lot of ifs, ands, buts, different scenarios here. You could say, what if it's not my house? What if we don't have the vacuum? What if I'm in a hurry? What if the cat needs more help? Yes, and think through those situations. Think through how you'd prioritize it and what you might do. More importantly, as a boss leader, Think through those situations and understand what you expect your team to do, and then train them to that process. Until next time, join us at Boss at the Helm on Instagram and bossatthehelm.com. Take care.